So we're here in St Finbarr's Hurling and Football Club in Togher in Cork, and delighted to be joined by the Cork senior hurling manager John Meyler. John, thanks for having us in this in your home for well over 30 years at this stage. But I think a lot of people won't realise that you're actually originally from Wexford and would have grown up in Wexford. Wexford were a power for 2 decades at that stage and would have won even in All-Ireland in '68, I think, when you were an 11 or 12-year-old. Would that team have been, a lot of the great players in that team been kind of your early influences and heroes in hurling?
Yeah, the team of '56 that won the All-Ireland with the Rackards and Jim English and those, and Jim English was the captain, and my father had a pub at home in Tecumseh, down right in the corner of Wexford, and he had a massive big photograph up on the wall of that '56 team that beat Cork in the All-Ireland final. So as a child, you'd look at that picture every day and you'd see the Rackards, but you also saw some of the Cork players, Christy Ring, Jimmy Brown, Tony Shaughnessy, all of those players. So that would have been an early influence on me looking at that '56. And also then Wexford were very successful in the late '50s, early '60s and that, coming into '68. And ironically, that two great Wexford hurlers, Ned Wheeler and Phil Wilson, used to drive oil lorries years and years ago, and they used to deliver oil. We had a shop as well, and Wheeler used to come in, and my mother would always give him a cup of tea and a sandwich. And for that cup of tea and the sandwich, we'd have go out into the back garden and play hurling with Ned Wheeler. And Phil Wilson was also used to drive a Caltex lorry. And, they were the early days of how I got involved. And, as a child, to puck around with a hero like Wheeler or Phil Wilson, and I remember them vividly, and they would spend 10-15 minutes with me in the garden, and then when the hurling was over, in for a cup of tea and a sandwich. Look, it's what memories are made of, and I remember those vividly.
You went to college down here, and I think that was the start of a long love affair with Cork that went on for many years, and you joined the club I think in 1980, and you transferred county in 1982. You just made it to the Wexford senior team, I think, the year before, and played championship. That must have been a tough decision to actually transfer county, was it? Yeah,
I originally attended Gormanstown College, which was just outside Dublin, and two of us decided to come to Cork in 1974 to UCC to study science. So that was kind of, I got in here and, bedded into the culture of Cork, and there was a great culture of success here. Cork were winning All-Ireland's hurling and football in the '70s. So, and then I became friendly with Christy Ryan and John Cremin, who were playing with the Bars in 1980. So really it was obvious to transfer out here and to come out here and, to then see the people that were out here, Gerald McCarthy, Charlie McCarthy, Con Roach, Jimmy Barry Murphy, Ger Cunningham, all of those incredible legends of hurling. And I suppose in a way that started my love affair with the Bars and with Cork at that stage. And, I was playing with Wexford at the time, but travelling at those days, I didn't have a car, just finished out of college trying to get a job, all of those. So, Cork asked me to change allegiance in 1983, so that was it.
Your playing career with Cork is kind of interesting, because it seems to me like you were always kind of on the verge of it. You played, I think, in the Munster Championship in '83, but weren't there for the final, and the opposite then would have happened in '86, where you were around for the final but not for the Munster Championship. Was it tough going, trying to get in, or were you someone that was just like happy to be kind of knocking around?
Look, it was tough going. If you look down in the history of hurling, where players change inter-county allegiance, sometimes it's quite difficult to get into another county, because and I found it quite difficult. I found it hard to come from the club into the inter-county setup, and Cork had some incredible players at that time, like JB was there, and Tomas Mulcahy, Kevin Hennessy and that, and they were very successful, and they got into 2 finals, 82, 83, and came short against Kilkenny and those, but then winning the Centenary All-Ireland in '84. I got involved in '86, and I was sitting on the bench for that. And look, I was grateful at the time for those, and it was a massive experience. And the club helped me as well. So look, I got a lot out of it, really.
What kind of a hurler were you?
I'm just a workaholic.
Yeah, I would have thought so.
Workaholic. I was told in no uncertain terms to get the ball to JB and just give him the ball, let him do the rest. and I was intelligent enough to understand that I suppose working together with Jimmy, and Charlie McCarthy was there at the time. Just Charlie was retired in 1981, so they were fantastic players of high skill. I was more a workaholic, I was more a workhorse, and just get the ball. And I was lucky at the club time to have Tomas Marr from Waterford, who played with Waterford, and Christy Ryan in the half forward line, and we didn't do too badly, and I was okay, and I wouldn't have been the most stylish, or you know what I mean, but God worked great. I would have worked.
And understanding of the game, and
an understanding of the game. But I had great teachers, and I think that's what I suppose started off the kind of the coaching bug within me, because Gerald and Charlie McCarthy, Con Roach, Jimmy Grady, who was Donal O'Grady's father, all of those really helped me to understand the game. And they would talk to me afterwards, after a club game. They would talk to me about what I'd done right, what I'd done wrong. So, they were great teachers here, and you had great students of the game. Mick Kennefick, who was the youngest player ever to captain Cork to win All Ireland, Donny Cremin, Tim Milan. Those people were really good, and they really helped me. And they really brought those players through in the 80s.
If you look at, just looking at the pictures on the wall here, and some of the names are unbelievable, but what I can't stop thinking is, you're all Cork managers. So it's yourself, there's John Allen, Donal O'Grady, Jimmy, Gerald, obviously, but in the day before. Like, what is it like? Is that what it is? It was the structure here, and it's passed down knowledge.
Yeah. It was the structure, but it was the teaching, and they were very good at imparting knowledge. Jimmy Grady, Donald's father, was incredible. He was a great student of the game. Mick Kennefick, I said he was the youngest player ever to captain an All Ireland winning team. Really, good teachers of the game, and they had a very good way of passing on information, passing on knowledge. And Donny Cremin as well. So they studied the game and they imparted that knowledge to us. And I suppose it's ironic that all some of the last Cork managers, John Allen, as you said, Donal O'Grady, Jimmy Barry, So I'm trying to just follow in their footsteps to win an All Ireland or something like that. That's all.
Yeah, that's all. No big expectations.
No pressure.
No pressure. Yeah. I wanted to ask you actually, because when you're doing all this and winning, like I think was it just 5 county titles, Munster, everything here in the hurling. You also captained the Bars to an All Ireland football, which is incredible. And at the same time, there was a time you were playing League of Ireland. Would you still see it as a benefit, even in this day and age when things have got so extreme with the training and the dedication, that young players, young kids play a variety of sports and don't just like
I think it's critical. I remember when David was growing up, and my daughter as well, that they played all sports. David played hurling, football and soccer. He retired from swimming at 8 years of age, and a bit of karate as well. So, as you get older, when you go 12, 13, 14, when it comes to 17, 18, then you really need to decide. You really need to pick your sport in. And you must learn all of the different sports. And, when I went to secondary school, I played hurling, football, soccer, handball. When I went to UCC in 1974, it was much the same. There wasn't that same level of intensity of competition in UCC that's there now, that you could only take one. So I was able to play hurling, football and soccer within that atmosphere, within that context. But then once I left UCC, joining the Bars, then this became 100% more commitment. So the level of commitment, the level of intensity then was gone higher here.
Just on your managerial career then, or coaching career, I think is probably how you'd prefer to call it from what I've heard. But your you will have first come to prominence, I suppose, as the Kerry manager. And, this is so funny because I have an image in my head of that match against Waterford. Kerry beat Waterford in 1993, first win in the championship in 67 years. I have an image in my head in that match like as if I watched, or at least watch highlights. And it was only when I was reading last night in the Dennis Walsh Hurling Revolution Years book that there's no footage at all of it. And that's how kind of famous and folklore-y almost that game is, that I think I remember it and I never saw it at all, like, describe to me what that must have been, or even the process of getting to the stage where, and I know this isn't the Waterford of now, and that they were in a little bit of a kind of a rebuilding period themselves. I think it was Paul Flynn's debut. But to get over the line and beat Waterford in the championship match with Kerry is just, it feels so foreign to us, I think, now, looking back on it.
Yeah, it was my first foray into inter-county senior management, and I was asked by Sean Kelly, who is now in the MEP, Tony O'Keefe at the time in Kerry, would I take over the team? And we'd had a very successful league campaign in '92, and we were beaten by Tipperary in the quarter-final of the National Hurling League in '93 with a full forward line of English, Fox and Cormac Bonner. So the lads really, really trained. And we had incredible players. We had Christy Joe Welsh, DJ Leahy, Brendan O'Sullivan, really, really good players, really committed. And going down to Waterford and beating them that day, I suppose I didn't really fully understand it after we beat them, because I said, look, all we've done is beat Waterford. It's not as if we've beaten Cork or Tipperary at that stage, at that time. And it was incredible, and I suppose because there is no footage of it, it has probably gone down in folklore history and that. But I never forget afterwards, even coming out, there was a 25-seater bus from Kerry. Ned Horgan came down from Kilmiley and he drove the bus down and all that. So, they invited me onto the bus after the game, gave me a round of applause, and there were, I'd say, about 20 Kerry supporters there. But there were incredible players there, and Mike Casey, Seamus McIntyre, Lord Western Guard, who died here in Cork, and so I thought it was just normal that we beat Waterford. I didn't read too much into it at the time, but
How do you think, as someone that has more experience than most and are now involved in the most traditional of counties and are now at the head of the most traditional of counties, and see the difference in the two setups, how do you think that we can make hurling more of a national sport?
The structure, really. It starts in the primary schools. That's where hurling starts. And it's to get those hurling schools, or to get those primary schools playing hurling on a regular basis. You have to come to school with a hurley in your hand. And there is that culture here in Cork of kids, Ski in the Skull, all of those that run the primary schools competitions here. In Kerry and Carlow that I've been in, you don't have enough of them playing, schools hurling, and then you need to get them in the schools, and then you need to coach them and put them into development squads. So it's a structure, it's hard work, and it's difficult.
Is it a mystery to you that it isn't something that is outside of more than 10 or 12 counties?
When I train Carlow, you're just going across the border, and you're going from Gorn into Bagnallstown, and then you see Gorn, DJ Carey, and then you see Bagnallstown struggling, and you kind of say, why? So it comes down to culture, and that's really it, the culture of the area where you are, and how they develop. And when you grow up in a certain area, all you want to be is play hurling for the club, play hurling for the county. That's it. And when I train Carlow, you go across through Kilkenny in the city, where you have James Stevens, O'Loughlin Gales, Dixborough, all of those clubs, and then you go out the roads. I'd say the first place you hit is Bagnallstown, and you find it hard then to understand why are they not strong at hurling if there are 3 senior hurling teams in Kilkenny City who will win All Ireland. Yeah. But then again, you look then at other interests. There probably is no football in Kilkenny. There's very little, possibly a small bit of rugby, possibly a small bit of soccer, which all of those different sports draw on people. So it's the culture of the area, really.
So tell me about going back to Wexford then in '07, and it seemed like a really great homecoming job for you, but that was a time when Kilkenny were at their absolute apex. The '07 season, you lost to them twice in a Leinster final and All-Ireland semi-final. That was the year they obviously ran over Limerick in the final. They were probably unstoppable. In '08 then, you lost a quarter-final, and then there was no '09, I think, kind of surprisingly, because it seemed like progress was being made. Was that ultimately a disappointment for you, kind of going back to Wexford after all those years?
Going down in '07, after Wexford's championship campaign in '06, I felt that I could contribute, I felt I could add. And and I had a very good start. I thought we got to a league semi-final, we were beaten by Kilkenny, and in the Leinster Championship beaten by Kilkenny in the Leinster final, and beaten by Kilkenny in the All-Ireland semi-final after beating Tip in the quarter-final. Yeah. And unfortunately I picked Kilkenny at the wrong time, to go to Wexford at the wrong time when Kilkenny were at their best. When you had brilliant players, Tommy Welsh, JJ Delaney, Jackie Tyrrell, all of those, you know, they were in their prime, they were incredible. You know, I would say the best team of all time in hurling in my just short period of time, but an incredible hurling team and an incredible commitment, and Cody as well, who had, you know, the knowledge and the insight and all of that.
Getting to kind of now, like, and I'm skipping forward a long number of years, and I think that's half that is the point really, is because in that time, and obviously you were involved back with Kerry and Carlo as well, but the amount of time you've been involved in Cork hurling at different levels, different underage categories, different clubs, everything like that, to get to where you like to be the senior hurling manager this year has been a long road. Did you think that it was kind of going in that trajectory?
No, I never was looking for the Cork senior hurling job. I was asked would I coach the Cork under-15s 4 years ago, and I was delighted to do that, and I got involved in that, and you know, we won the under-15 championship. Then the following year I had the 16s, and we won the Arabon Cup up in Tipperary, and you know, I was delighted with that, and it was back, you know, in the kind of in the inter-county scene in terms of underage, and I really loved the underage. I loved the coaching, and you know, you get young fellas in and all of that, and coach them and manage them, and you know, a vacancy then appeared with the Cork under-21 team, and the county board contacted me and said, you know, would I manage the Cork under-21 team? And I was reluctant at the time to leave the under-16s, because I felt there was a lot of good talent there, and there was a lot of talent coming at underage, but they persuaded me to take over the under-21 team 2 years ago. And also then they asked me then, would I get involved with the Cork senior hurling team as a selector with, you know, the under-21 manager's hat on, so to try and bring through the players, you know, into the senior setup. And so I was delighted to do that, and you know, again, I was back working with the under-21s, and a lot of good talent that's there now, that's coming through now as well. And then I was the selector with Kieran Kingston, who was manager at the time, and I think that worked out very well. And then this time last year in 2017, Kieran resigned and said he wasn't going forward, and you know, I was asked by the county board then, would I take over the senior team? So that was really the background of it, and how I came involved in that then.
I was in Thurles last year for one of the very few Clare fans that was there for the Munster final, and I have to say, just that sea of red and that feeling around town and then in the stadium, that there was something about the Cork fan, I think, that feels like it's back, and that, like, obviously eventually has to turn into All Irelands, and we're not kidding anyone, it's Cork and Munsters aren't going to be good enough, but it must feel great to be involved in this kind of just a feeling of upsurge. Yeah. And
I think what you said, it's that Corkness, it's that red, it's that sea of red that was, you know, in Thurles there this year, all of the Munster Championship matches, and I think Cork people realise that it's coming. I think there's, you know, young buds, young shoots coming. The under-21 team are in an All-Ireland final as we speak. So I think Cork people realise that, they see the youth that's coming, and the talent that they have. Coleman, Fitzgibbon, Kingston, Sean O'Donoghue, Luke Mead, all of these players. And I think, you know, Jimmy won in Ireland with young players in way back. So I think Cork people see that, and it, you know, it's a reflection of Corkness, it's a reflection of red, and that's what they have been brought up on, a tradition of winning.
Are you aware, I suppose, as manager now, and after a team that's lost 2 semi-finals, that this is the 2005 to 2018 is the longest run that Cork haven't won All-Ireland since, I think, 1919 or something like that?
I was aware of Cork every time I look at that photograph at home in my father's pub.
Yeah. Of
1956 when Wexford beat Cork in an All-Ireland final, and I'm aware of all of those icons of Cork hurling that I was, as I said to you earlier about Mick Cashman, Christy Ring, Tony O'Shaughnessy, all of those players. I'm aware of that culture, and you know that Cork, and I said this during the week, that Cork need to be at the top table all the time. People won't be happy next year with 2 semi-final losses. They'll now need to see a further step, and that's our challenge, and that's our main goal next year.
Yeah, but I suppose my question is, as a hurling manager and someone that understands the game and understands bringing through a team, does that make things a little bit harder? And I'm sure you're not worried about the pressure of it, I'm saying, but does it make it a little bit harder because you're talking about bringing a young team through that are learning different aspects of the game, learning maybe how to close out a game, as was the case against Limerick last week, and different things that basically we're in this period of hurling where there's a puck of the ball between 6 or 7 teams, and we've never really had it like it. And winning All Ireland isn't going to be that easy, but because you're Cork and because you've a good team here, that's going to be the expectation. And as you said, 3 years in a row probably won't be good enough. Is that?
No, there's a massive expectation on next year. Even this year, there was a huge expectation because we won, you know, the Munster final last year. Then that expectation increases this year and certainly next year. So we're aware of that. We're conscious of that, and people expect that. So there's going to be enormous pressure on next year.
One question I always ask everyone to finish here, and it's harder with people who are still involved because some things can be too raw, but as a whole, and you look back on your career playing club county, managing club county, what would be the day that you kind of say, Jesus, this is the one I'm thinking about?
I haven't reached it yet. There's one thing in life that I still have to do, and once I've done that, I'd be happy.
Very good. John Meyler, thanks so much for having us here.
Thank you.
Cheers.